Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm a child psychiatrist and parent coach, and I'm also mum. And today I'm talking about whether secure attachment is really that important. Everyone always goes on about it, but actually, how important is it to have a secure attachment pattern? If you're curious about that, stay tuned. A secure attachment pattern isn't the be-all and end-all of everything. It's not that if you don't develop a secure attachment pattern or your child doesn't, it means that they're going to have an awful life. But having a secure attachment pattern probably just does make things a little bit easier in life, partially because we're extremely social creatures and humans are intended to live in some kind of communities, and a secure attachment pattern usually makes it easier to relate to other people. So I think it just makes it a little bit easier for your child to be sociable later on in life, to have good relationships, and things will go more smoothly really. So it's not that something awful will happen if your child doesn't have a secure attachment pattern, but I think it will make life a little bit harder for them if they don't develop that. What is a secure attachment pattern? What does it actually look like? I guess it's quite difficult to explain in some ways, but in other ways, all it really means is that your child feels safe in relationships and that they're able to repair relationships and to understand that sometimes things fall apart a little bit, but they will come together again. So they don't become too sort of worried or anxious if there is a bit of a break in relationships. They can kind of understand that these things happen, and they tend to have a good sense of self, a good sense of being worthwhile, and understand what a good relationship is. So actually, if they're not in a good relationship, to be able to walk away from that, or to not engage with it at all if it's not working out for them. So that makes them quite good and competent at choosing people to have relationships with which will probably meet their needs, and they don't really worry about their needs being met. They're not needy people. They can meet a lot of their own needs as they grow up, and that's one of the other aspects of it, is they learn how to regulate themselves emotionally, so they don't necessarily need people around them to regulate everyday ups and downs in emotions. Though of course we all need people to help us regulate when very difficult things happen, and that's part of the normal thing about being in society. Insecure attachments are different, and they can look quite different depending on what style you have, but the main difference from a secure attachment is there's usually a sense of difficulty in relationships, and that could be that you always want very close relationships, and without very close relationships you might feel that you're not very worthwhile and that nobody really likes you and you feel very lonely. Or it could be that actually intense relationships are just too much and you just need to get away from people, but then when you do get away from people you start to feel a bit lonely and it's very difficult to know exactly how close to get. So it's that kind of uncomfortableness with being in relationships for different reasons. And again, insecure attachment patterns can create anxiety. So often a child who's insecurely attached can be quite anxious, and adults can be as well, especially if the person they're attached to is not available or there's some problem with the relationship to that person. They can become really very, very upset, anxious, worried, very, very severe degree actually. Or sometimes they can just completely shut down and actually just struggle to have relationships with anyone because they feel that everyone lets them down, or they feel that relationships are just not positive things and they don't really want to go near them. And again, that is hard because as humans we are intended to be in society, and that's a fairly normal way to function. So it is important to think about attachment. It is formed very early on in life. Your style is usually formed by the first year, or sort of year and a half. And one of the things that really contributes to that is actually your own attachment style as a parent. So the real thing that you can do to help your child develop a more secure attachment is actually to think about your own way of relating to people and explore that, because that is going to have a very big impact on what kind of attachment style they develop. So if it's not something you've thought about, kind of adult attachment, it's really, really worth thinking about. I'll put some resources in so you can have a read through. There's some really good books and things if you're interested in exploring your own attachment style. because actually that's probably the biggest thing that you can do to support your child in getting a secure attachment.